Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here today with Nong Li, who is the Chief Technical Officer for Okera, cybersecurity company. Nong, it's nice to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hey, before we get into our discussion, why don't you give everyone just a quick thumbnail on what the company does, what types of technology you guys provide?
Yeah. Okera was founded about 5 years ago, and we help organizations, typically very large organizations, with their data access and data authorization requirements. Right. So it's very common for our customers to care about data security, data privacy, and those kind of things, but at the same time make sure the data is easy for the right people to be able to access them. And we help them with that entire set of problems related to policy management, access control, auditing, and so on and so forth.
What do you mean when you say data for somebody just listening? I presume we're talking enterprise here, but give us a little bit more about what you mean by the types of data that you guys are protecting from unauthorized access.
Yeah, so I mean, at the core of it, we're centered around data for analytics, right? So if you think about all organizations today, right, we talk about data driven, we talk about all of those kind of things, and that's essentially data that the organization has accumulated about their customers, about their product, about all kinds of things they're maintaining to make better business decisions, right? And some of that is sensitive by law requirements, and some of that is just for ethical reasons, and so on and so forth. And you want to make sure the right things are being handled properly. So that's the set of use cases that we're centered around.
That makes sense. Now, Nang, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this, and maybe give us a little feel for how the company was formed and what some of the prompting was that led to the creation of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career actually doing something not data related. I was kind of a computer graphics nerd. But then I got into this space when I joined Cloudera, and really saw a lot of these problems firsthand. So, I was on the product development engineering team working on a lot of these open source projects that are common to the core data platforms that enterprises are using today. Right? So I had the privilege of working on one of those and lead some of those Apache open source projects. And then before I started Okera, I was at Databricks doing similar kind of things on the Apache Spark system. And just working on the products, the technology ecosystem, and the customers trying to adopt it, this challenge around access control just came up again and again. Right? It was these new technologies you can just solve remarkable computational problems, and we were seeing teams have tremendous success doing these. But extending this as the fabric, right? These new technologies for the enterprise data platform proved to be challenging around these things, right? These kind of governance and security things weren't quite what we needed, and we felt that these kind of problems would be a great accelerator to the adoption of these new technologies and these enterprises solving these problems, and then that's how we got started.
In a typical enterprise, I want to ask, obviously, if you've got a data lake, then you know where that data is. But what's been your experience? Do most of your customers have a pretty good understanding and inventory of their data? What's been your observation there?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, certainly customers are on a spectrum of maturity, right? And obviously, this technology is moving so fast, so we expect that to continue. I would say data inventory and knowing exactly what you have is a challenge across the board, right? But I think one of the things that we've seen be really successful is, you want to have the technology and platform capabilities that can span the whole enterprise. But even, if you're a large enterprise, different portions of the business are going to move at different rates, right? Some have their data better cataloged than others, and so on and so forth. So even within an enterprise, we see that sort of spectrum of them. And then our point of view is really that kind of access control and auditing and cataloging is really cyclic, right? So you need the auditing and access control to help you understand what's happening already. As more data shows up and you catalog and figure out how to expose them, it really isn't like a sequential activity, right? It kind of is ongoing, and you got to keep at it.
I'm going to guess, and tell me if I got this right, that probably all of your customers are using cloud to some degree now to manage and handle this data. Is that right? And I'm curious how you guys manage in like a both hybrid and also cloud. And cloud is probably multi-cloud now, right? It's really exploded. what role do these architectural decisions around cloud make when somebody does want to build access controls into their environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say all of our customers are certainly considering cloud, and many of our implementations, the majority, are on cloud-based infrastructure. I would say, and of course, all of them have a significant on-premise footprint as well. Right? It doesn't just go away. So I would say that ecosystem is really important for us in a few different ways, right? So centralizing things like access control and metadata and so on and so forth is more complex the more diverse the environment is, right? And the cloud technologies, single cloud compared to on-prem or multi-cloud, obviously just more diversity in the stack. Nevertheless, the way we would say it is you want diversity in the storage technology you pick, right? You want to pick the best. You want the best query and BI experience, and different people have different opinions, but you probably don't want a diverse way to think about security and access management. That's something that probably just gives you more headache. So anyway, yeah, that diverse environment for sure helps. And then I think the other thing that we're seeing is, a lot of the benefit of the cloud is you can run experiments faster, right? You don't have to wait for infrastructure provisioning. You can, I think that's a lot of the motivation for these teams to start using these technologies. And that makes access to data more acute, right? If you shorten the time it takes to do the other parts of your data experiment, because infrastructure is easier to manage, and SaaS makes it easy to set up things, so on and so forth, then you certainly don't want to waste the time waiting for proper copies of data to be made for you and all of this kind of hoops that people have to jump through when access control is too hard.
I mean, is that really the essence of what's driving this? Is it that idea that self-service experimentation and analytics and so on, there's no intermediary here that's serving up the data. You're not going to the library and checking something out where someone asks you for credentials. You're self-servicing this data, right? Is that in a sense the prescription for why I need access policies?
I think that's certainly a huge portion of it, right? So, I mean, from our point of view, and this has been true since the company has started, is we don't think, between better security and faster data access, you have to pick one or the other, right? If you have the proper control set up, you can pick both, right? Part of the, and I think that's really core to our philosophy throughout. So I do, yeah. So I think, if we look at macro trends, of course, every company wants to do more with data, make better data-driven decisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they need access to more. And then obviously on the flip side, we certainly see way more interest in data privacy, right, from regulatory concerns to others. So it's kind of the marriage of those two that's really driving this need.
Yeah, but theoretically, when people are thinking access right, access policy, and access control, it's who can access what under what conditions. What are some typical kinds of policies? Like how fine-grained can you guys get for an enterprise? What sort of examples or scenarios come to mind where somebody's using the Okera platform to protect, say, a big data lake that has marketing data or something like that? What would be the kind of thing that somebody would use your platform to implement?
Yeah, so there are, I mean, so in terms of granularity, they can be extremely granular and sort of map to the business requirements. So I'll give you maybe a couple examples of some of those where it makes sense. So, we have one example of one of our biggest customers, and I would say this is a pretty strict interpretation of GDPR style requirements, right? We're monitoring customer activity on their website and mobile app and those kind of things, right? A very standard data lake use case. And the requirements that they want to be able to enforce is if I'm an end user, I should be able to go on, to this company's website and say, don't use my activity for marketing analytics, right? The right to be forgotten, that kind of semantics. So the way that we help them support a policy like that is anytime, right, user activity data is queried, so from web traffic and so on and so forth, we're dynamically filtering out users that have chosen to opt out, and we're dynamically obfuscating sort of the more personal fields for users that haven't been active very long, right? So it's both a sort of dynamic filtering policy use case, as well as dynamic obfuscation. So if you're an end user and you say, okay, I'm going to go on the company's website and say, forget me, the next analytics query that's run will have this user's records now just removed from all of the BI reports, machine learning use cases, so on and so forth. So it's really sort of as granular and sophisticated as you need it to be.
Where do you install? Where do you sit? Like, are you sitting as is it a proxy? Is it a SaaS? Is it a man in the middle? Is it tangled into the data lake? What's the most typical sort of platform implementation that you see with customers? And I'm guessing there's probably multiple options, but I'm curious what you see.
Yeah. So we're not a SaaS product, so the customer deploys us entirely in their environment today. That's the setup. Now you brought up a few options on where we sit, and I think that's kind of the key, one of the key properties of the platform is the answer is all of the above. And that's really some of the challenge with what we're trying to do, right? I think one of the main challenges is that the modern data platform, right, the data lake, is very, very diverse in the tools in it, right? You're not going to store everything in a data warehouse. Typically, you're going to have, technologies that look like object stores and relational databases, right? And those just have very, very different system capabilities, right? Kind of what a system like S3 can do versus what Redshift can do as a storage system, completely different. Nevertheless, you're going to have customer data in both, right? You're going to have the same kind of data in both. Therefore, you're going to want the same kind of policies in both. So then, what's the trick to make sure that they can be consistently enforced? So all of the models you said we do support. So kind of proxy, man in the middle. Some of these systems are inherently extensible, particularly ones in the big data ecosystem. That's just kind of their genesis. So we can plug into all of those and support kind of this wide combination of platforms.
And the data steward would be like sitting at like a console or something, like authoring these things, like writing the policies. Is that more or less how it works? Like I would have some assisted environment that helps me decide what the right policy, and then you guys would apply it to the right data. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
I might be saying that wrong.
No, you got it. Yeah. So, you install our platform. We have a web UI that's really centered around that steward data administrator use case. So, it's designed so that you don't have to be very technical, right? You can have a sort of drag and drop style UI for authoring policies and so on and so forth. And if you're a sort of a SQL jockey, there's then mapped to kind of SQL extensions that we've made for automation and various other things. I would say that's one, and then yeah, so that's kind of the way that people
makes sense. Now you had mentioned the GDPR earlier. I'm curious, are you guys seeing government kind of step in and is like these frameworks? How much of this now is becoming a must do? 5 years ago was probably a really nice to do. Is this now at the point where it's not really a big option here that because of government and other types of regulatory controls that this is something you pretty much have to do? Am I reading that right?
I think so. We certainly see it along those lines too. I mean, I think there's a few things that's driving it, right? Which is I don't think we're going to go backwards, right? I don't think things are going to dramatically loosen up. And then obviously, I think we're in a place where different countries, different regions, so on and so forth, are going to come up with different requirements. And obviously, if you're a large enterprise, you likely do business in a whole bunch of them, right? And some of those are, and I think that kind of variation, right? So we talk about this with our customers is you need a system for access control that's a little bit future-proof, right? Nobody's going to be able to predict what the policy changes are going to be or how your posture on privacy and ethics and so on is going to change. So let's make sure we build this in a foundational way, right? That's robust. So then if your business context changes in 3 months, you're not sort of like, we gotta scramble now. So I think we certainly see that, and then more teeth to the regulations.
Tell me a little bit about the industries that are buying the product. I just like a natural for financial services and the organizations that are handling data need to be very careful with it. But what's been your experience so far? Are there any sectors that are say more hot than others and for this kind of access protection?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, as you pointed out, our biggest sector is definitely financial services. And then I would say the second one that's a little bit smaller, but pretty close, is healthcare, pharma, advanced medicine, those kind of related problems. They have a lot of clinical data. They have, you know, drug discovery, those kind of use cases. Like the faster they can get meaning out of that data, the more it drives their business. So those we see a ton. And then if the ones that have sort of a lot of broad customer data, so that might be retail, that might be some sort of manufacturing style use cases. Those we also see quite a bit. But I would say center around those first two verticals.
Yeah, data driven, data heavy. This would be both a nice to have and a must have, which is that's a metric we always use at Tag Cyber. Like when we look at new technologies, there are ones that you wish you could have, but you don't necessarily have to do it. This really is moving in the direction of
Yeah,
mandatory.
certainly. Yeah, and fintech for sure. Right? Absolutely.
It's mandatory. Hey, I'm going to ask you to take the crystal ball out now, and we're going to take a look. What's coming in this area? Like, you see, like these maybe artificial intelligence doing this, or how is this going to eventually kind of evolve? What should we expect for this type of data protection?
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's a couple things that I think is going to really kind of push what we can do. So we talk. Um, I mean, I think what we're going to see is sort of a real convergence of related workflows in metadata management and policy management and sort of auditing that all tie together. Right? We have it's and again, the way we approach the problem is data access management, data authorization. This is again kind of a live system. It constantly needs to be maintained and so on and so forth. So I think we're going to see some of those things really tie together in ways that dramatically simplify how you can improve your security posture. Right?
That convergence you're referring to is like between evolving data science and say cybersecurity and like all of that converging into one discipline. Is that the idea?
Yeah, because it is. I mean, I think one of the things is it is a multidisciplinary task already.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We need people who are experts at kind of legal, at policies, understanding the data, data engineering, and those kind of things. And we're going to see, I think, kind of quite a bit of conversions of the tooling here that just makes this way more efficient.
That's excellent. Well, I think that convergence will be welcome. These are naturally complementing areas. And anybody who just looks at the internet now, I mean, you can see what's happening from privacy and security perspective. It's been a jailbreak with most private data lakes. You can't seem to keep hackers out. So
It's way too complex right now.
yeah, I can hardly think of something more urgent than this for society. So I'm glad you guys are working on this. Now, if people like what they heard today, what's a good way for them to be in touch? Is the website a good place for them to get maybe a briefing on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. The website is a great place. I mean, certainly feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm just nong@okera.com. But from our website, I think you can find certainly more detail about the products and demo videos, as well as kind of sign up for more information from us.
That's excellent. Well, Nong, it was wonderful catching up.
Yeah.
On behalf of our Tag Cyber team, I want to thank you for making some time for us, and I'm sure the people watching really enjoyed and learned quite a bit from you. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, and thanks for having us.
Great to see you. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time.